We don't have a specific timeline. I know this is the very first step, and it always amazes me that, the press is chomping at the bit to break this story and get it out there. And here we are. This is the very first time we're putting it in the public domain to start the discussion with the public. And then we get criticized for starting the discussion. This is the beginning.
This isn't the beginning of the conversation. When you have a vote, it's done. Like, you're moving ahead. And Medvedev just admitted they don't have a timeline. They don't have anything. They're just starting the conversation. Who just starts the conversation and then has a vote to do it? Nobody.
We have an executive branch, and for county-wide services of all manner of services, the county manager manages it. She runs the executive branch, but she has elected officials, this county council, over her. So we heard some concern that suddenly there wasn't going to be an elected official overhead. I mean, all we're really doing is shifting from under one elected official to the council through the auspices of the executive branch. Is there any clarification?
So Councilor Medvedev is really wanting to fool people in thinking that the jail services are just going to move under another elected, people. But here's the truth. Let me read to you what this says. Now, I'm not going to read in detail, but I'm going to kind of summarize. Here's the powers of the council. Tell me if you hear anything about overseeing departments. Levy taxes, appropriate revenue, provide compensation for all county employees, so they basically handle the finances on that side. Adopt by ordinance comprehensive plans, land development, conduct public hearings, carry out other legislative duties as authorized and required by the law, set collective bargaining guidelines and approve collective bargaining agreements, confirm or reject appointments to boards, have concurrent authority with the county manager to nominate members to the following boards and commissions. That's it. A little bit further, relationship with other branches. So how does the county council, for example, the jail services that are now going to be in the executive branch, moved over from an elected person to the county manager? Here's the three things. Well, first of all, council members shall not interfere in the administration of the executive branch. They shall not issue orders to or direct, either publicly or privately, any officer, agent, employee, contractor, or vendor. In the direction supervisor, they basically have to work under the county manager. Nothing contained herein shall prohibit a council member from referring a citizen complaint, basically through the county manager, submitting a request to the county manager to work with a department head to investigate a constituent issue. So again, they have to get the county manager's approval, permission. Or third, requesting information or advice pertinent to the legislative deliberations and actions of the council for any officer, agent, employee, contractor, vendor, subject to the direction and supervision of, wait for it, the county manager. So you took someone, jail services, who is basically under the elected sheriff, and now you move them under the county manager, who's an unelected bureaucrat, and you have the council over them, but they can't talk to the jail services now. They can't do anything unless they go through the county manager. I think the criticism stands solid, and also the lawyer, if you notice, was very hesitant in answering that question. I had to kind of like redirect him with questions in order to give him an affirmative question, because really at the nature of what he was asking was my issue of saying, you're moving it under an unelected bureaucrat was actually more accurate than his comments.
Piggyback on Councillor Medvegi there in terms of this accountability piece and moving it from an elected. To me, there's a greater sense of accountability because we are holding one person accountable, and that's our county manager, the executive branch, rather than the people who are voters are voting for us, but they're not, or they're voting for the sheriff, but they're not intimately involved in the details of what happens on a daily basis at our local jail. The county manager is, whoever the commander in charge of the jail is, and as a result, the council will be. So I think there's an extra level of accountability, frankly, rather than less.
Basically, what Councillor Olson is saying is we know what we're doing better than you do. We're gonna basically, it's that arrogance factor of like, hey, we know how to do this better than actually law enforcement that's in the trenches, that's involved in it. We can do it better. Just the arrogance that's on display, it's really kind of sickening.
As we move forward, but this does open up, I think, additional dialogue and people with specific expertise to come in and actually help provide some guidance on how we're managing the jail, what resources do those who are housed in the jail are getting, what services are being provided, are they in the right location? So, bringing people with the expertise to the table is invaluable. I mean, they are really going to help, and then also working with our local partners.
So if Ms. Otto is so concerned with bringing in the expertise to make the jail services better, why did it take her? She only toured the jail just a few weeks ago. Of all the several years that she's been county manager, just a few weeks ago, she finally toured it. And basically what she's saying is, we need to bring in some bureaucrats. We need to bring in some experts who are going to, basically carry our water as well as, help the bureaucratic state.
You said, Councillor Olson, regarding the extra level of accountability that you feel comes from this particular organizational structure. I totally agree with that because of the manner in which it places a public administrator in charge who is accountable to 5 electeds that will help in the oversight on a regular basis.
So what Karen just said is a flat out lie. Again, we just covered the structure of how it works, but basically you have jail services was under the sheriff. Now jail services are under the county manager, which then the county council is over, but the county council cannot talk to the jail services. Everything has to go through the county manager, who is an unelected bureaucrat. And give me a few examples, Ms. Bowerman, on how you hold the county manager accountable. I can't see any. I can't see any aspects in which you haven't carried her water and done pretty much everything she wants. Or, I have no examples to point to. So this is a flat out, bold-faced lie.
That we need to keep a handle on so that as we go forward, people in the public are really on board with understanding what is happening.
So what Mrs. Bowerman is saying is, we all are stupid, and we're not even able to understand the difference between correctional deputies or correctional officers and deputies. And that's really the issue here, is we just don't understand.
The concern that if the jail operation moves out from under the sheriff, that will, and under the county, that will somehow cause reduction or a loss in transparency. And my perception, and please correct me if I'm wrong, my perception is that the transparency would be at least equivalent to what it is, if not perhaps greater. Again, my personal perception that by calling it out as its own separate department with its own separate budget, all of that information and material will be clear, specific to that particular department instead of part of a larger department with multiple other mix of services. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but is that a fair interpretation in your opinion?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about transparency. How transparent is it, for example, when the county approved $3.1 million for retention bonuses for the county? They did not put it out for the public. They didn't post it online. They added it verbally at the meeting and provided no public knowledge before they approved it. Similar to this, they announced it because they did put it on the agenda 1 week before and giving only one opportunity for the public to speak, and clearly they ignored it. Is that transparency? Oh, and by the way, when you look at the report that they posted, there's no staff report that you normally see. There's no details of how this will impact the budget or in other aspects. That it's a typical form that the staff gives their input on things that the county is considered. There's nothing. There's absolutely no. I mean, you've heard it. There's no timeline. There's no workshop. There's been nothing. How transparent is that, Mr. Rylander? And so there's a pattern. If you step away from it and you look at it objectively, you'll see that there's a absolute pattern of a lack of transparency.
Being rushed, or that it's just they pulled it out, rabbit out of the hat, and decided to want to do this. Again, my perception is that there's been investigative work. There's been work going on in the background prior to my joining of the council, but that there's been effort there, and it's not just we suddenly have to do something today. It's been coming. Now, as to whether the communications, what's happened with who or behind, sometimes there are things that happen behind the scenes, as all of us know, that we either can't discuss or not aware of. But I guess again, my perception is that this is coming to a head to make something happen, because the belief is that we need to start taking steps to open the discussion to see what the future could look like and then be able to map it out.
That is correct. This has been discussed off and on for years since I've been here, including the sheriff. He's been part of some of those conversations. But yes, we're not going to rush this. This is just to officially give us the authority to start those conversations. It will not be rushed, though. We will ensure that we take the time that we need to get through the transition.
So if this isn't rushed, as Mr. Rylander is throwing another softball pitch to Kathleen Otto, I mean, these are all leading questions. They're all safe. They're all, I mean, yeah, it's really pretty embarrassing, especially for as much as Mr. Rylander, has been a warrior for conservatism in Clark County. This display of kowtowing and softball pitching, and in this particular case, his perception of all this work that's been done behind the scenes. So then, why isn't it ready? Why did you only give a week? Why isn't there a full staff report? Why haven't you had workshops? Why isn't there a timeline? See what I'm saying?
Had the opportunity and the pleasure of meeting or working with both of the candidates, and I am confident that they will be a good partner to be at the table through this transition.
This is pure gangster by Kathleen Otto. Okay, both candidates just gave public testimony that they're against this. this is a gangster move, a shot across their bow of not necessarily saying that she thinks that they're going to work well, but you better work well with me on this. I talked to a few other people that were there in the room and know the details, and they felt the same way. This was a very much a gangster kind of tactic.
As we've heard, this is literally just a first step. This resolution simply creates the Department of Jail Services. If you've come tonight concerned that there's going to be a big dramatic change as of tomorrow, that's not going to come to bear. If you've come tonight hoping that there would be a big dramatic change as of tomorrow, that's not going to come to bear. There's still a lot of work yet to do. We've heard from a few folks about concerns about budget, staff, and public safety. We have those concerns too. And that's why action has to be taken. This isn't a new conversation. It's been going on for quite some time in different iterations over many, many years. In just the last couple of years, we have seen multiple problems. L&I complaints, consent decrees, accidents, and lawsuits, all related to the jail. The jail is a county-wide service, and as the sheriff himself has said publicly, this change should create a better, safer jail. Safer for inmates and safer for employees. This is not a step toward privatization.
So I want you to just notice that someone has prepared these remarks for her, which is pretty typical. Temple Lentz has been on the council and has pretty much been handled, meaning that she is a puppet for the left, and I don't know who prepares her materials for her, but it's very clear that she's of the model of like the AOCs and whatnot, where they're really kind of an actor, and their job is just, you know, deliver the lines that they've been given. So just watch how she's looking down at her notes, and just reading the script, which is atypical for Temple Lentz, and has really become a thing in the age of Zoom, where you don't see it as much because she, you know, but it's been very clear in situations that that's exactly what's going on.
Partners throughout this process. The county manager has made that commitment. Staff will see to it that that is what happens. And we've already heard from many correction staff that they're not just supportive, but enthusiastic about this change. Since the sheriff has said that he also supports this, this should be a good change that we can make in partnership. And I do look forward to whoever is elected county sheriff being a part of that process and helping make it successful for the benefit of all residents of Clark County, for those who are inmates in the jail, and those who work for us to keep everybody there safe and go home safely at night. Thank you.